And welcome back, everyone, to this session. Today, I'm joined by Doepker. Welcome, Derek.
Yeah, glad to be here, Brian.
It's great to have you here as a returning guest. And for those of you who don't know Derek went from being a broke valet parker to best-selling author, and he sold over 100,000 books using free and low-cost marketing strategies. And now he shares these strategies and has been doing so for a long time with fellow authors to empower them to turn their passion from writing into a thriving business. And I am very, very happy today because I get to talk to Derek about something that he doesn't talk about very, very much, but I find very, very interesting, which is influencer marketing, obviously for authors. So I think it's best to go, very broad at first and start with the classic question. Can you explain what influencer marketing is and how it can benefit authors?
So right now, this is sort of a type of influencer marketing, meaning if you're watching this, if you're listening to me and you've never heard of me before, yet you've heard of Brian or someone invited you to this summit. So someone else made that connection and brought me into your world. Well, you can do the same thing in the sense that there's going to be other people, there's going to be fellow authors who you can connect with, form that relationship, and they can introduce you to their audience. So the first thing for authors is, yes, you want to reach your audience. You want to reach your readers. If you're a paranormal romance writer, you want to reach paranormal romance readers. Of course, that's part of your marketing strategy. The shift in question, though, is who's already got my readers as part of their audience. So for most authors, that's going to be other authors in your genre. I was just answering a question that came in as part of a coaching group, and it was an author asking about like book festivals and is that worth your time? And without getting into the details of that answer, my perspective on that was, well, you might go to festivals and events and sell to readers, and that's great. The big thing is if you're at these events, also connect with other authors, connect with other people in the industry, because those relationships could be far more lucrative. One relationship with a person who has thousands of people on, let's say, their email list who are your ideal audience, you can connect with that one person and then they could introduce you to a whole lot more other people. So all of this is to say that influencer marketing, some people might think of that as just purely like Instagram influencers or whatever. Really, it's just anyone who has built an audience of people who are the type of people that you want to connect with. And if I give sort of a numbers breakdown here, I mean, consider the time it's going to take you to build a following of, let's say, 10,000 readers on an email list. Okay, which of course still build your following. This is all tied into that. Or you could connect with 10 people who each have an audience of 1,000 readers and work out cross promotions and things with them. It's a lot quicker to form those 10 relationships than the time it's going to take you to build the 10,000 people on your list. And it works together, meaning you connect with these influencers and they're helping you build your audience, and vice versa. You might be helping them build their audience. So lots of tactical things. I'm sure there's some people going, well, how do I do this if I'm just starting out, if I don't have a following, if I don't know what to offer people? Imagine we'll get into some of those technical things. But right now, to answer your question, it's getting that big picture mindset. So you're going in and you start to have this different lens that you're looking at the world and looking at the world of marketing, where you see your peers and other people who have already built an audience. Those are some of your best relationships and connections.
So, yeah, exactly. That was actually going to be one of my next questions. How do I go about finding these people? Because I might know one or two already, but how can I find more? And how do I essentially break the ice if I am absolutely nobody in the space and I want to reach out to these people and connect?
So the first question, how do I find more? One thing is, and I know not every author reads other authors in their genre. I would typically recommend that, though it's hard for me to wrap my mind around writing in a genre and not being somewhat familiar with other authors in your genre. So that's the first thing. If you're not already doing this, think about who are some authors who are influences on you. And I think about, for me, who are some of my favorite authors? Who are some of the people who I really like their writing? It might be people that you learn from. And so that's one place to start, just your own personal fan who you're a fan of, right? Another thing can be there's technical ways. If someone writes sci-fi novels and you go on Amazon, you search the sci-fi bestseller list, you start seeing who are some of the top authors in there. Now there might be when you're starting out, you might not reach the absolute pinnacle of the New York Times bestsellers who've been around for decades. Yet you might think, okay, let's look in the self-published space. Let's go on into different groups and ask around who are some of your favorite, maybe it's indie authors if you're a self-published author, insert your genre. So you can start getting that research that way. I like to listen to podcasts. So if you listen to podcasts and say you listen to podcasts that interview, stick with sci-fi authors, and you start hearing some different people that you're like, yeah, I really like this person, what they're about. And the idea is whenever I approach an influencer, I'm usually a fan first. I like something that they've done, something that they've talked about, watched some of their videos, read some of their writing or their books, or something that lets me know we're on the same page here. So this is going to tie into how to break the ice here in a moment. That's another thing to think about. Either you're already a fan of them or you do a little research and find people who you're a fan of. And you might also think if you're on different people's email lists, you might go through that and think who are some other authors in your genre and you're on their email list. That's also going to help if you're not on email list to join some email list, because again, you can kind of do some of that research, but that can also give you inspiration for content as well. So to recap, people you're already a fan of, doing research on Amazon and the bestseller charts, asking around, hey, who are some of your favorite authors in these things? If you do happen to go to live events and things like that, where you're connecting with other authors, meeting people in person, and I'm going to keep using the word author. Technically, doesn't have to be an author to be an influencer. For most novelists, most fiction authors, it's going to be fellow authors who have that connection. And again, if it's like listening to podcasts, listening to interviews, things like that with other authors in your genre. And now to break the ice, then the first thing is an internal mindset, which whenever I'm reaching out to someone, I am not thinking, what can they give me? I'm considering, what can I give to them? What can I offer them? And immediately some people go to, well, I'm just starting out. I don't have much of an audience. I can't do anything for them. And to that I go, well, I'll pose the question and then I give an answer, but there's more than one answer to this, which is, what do humans value? What do people value? And it's not always just I'll email for you if you email for me. And also consider, how many things have you shared with people where you weren't getting any compensation? Maybe it's a restaurant you loved and you told friends about it. Was it because the restaurant was going to do something for you? Or just you like the restaurant, or you like the movie, or you read a book and you're telling people about this book that you read that you love, or, oh, check out this new author, or whatever it is. Many times we're sharing things not purely out of that back and forth exchange. And so that's oftentimes actually the best types of relationships, where it's not done purely because, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back type of thing. It's because each of you naturally appreciate what the other person is doing, or you might share something where I have no idea if this person would ever mention me or acknowledge me, yet I'm going to tell the world about them anyway. So when you get that mindset, then you go in, and one of the things that all people value is sincere appreciation. So one of the best things you can do, and you can watch this, listen to this, and when this interview is done, or when you go through all the interviews of the day, and you got a little time, take 5-10 minutes to send a message of appreciation to someone. And it could be another author in your genre, someone that you're a big fan of, and let them know how much you appreciate and admire. And that's it. It doesn't have to have an ask. It doesn't have to say, and then now promote my book, please. It's none of that at first, right? To first break the ice, it can simply be that genuine compliment and what you like about them. Now, there are some tactical ways that can turn into potential relationships. One thing is, if you're actually even thinking ahead, you might put in acknowledgments in your book. Some of the authors who influenced you have an acknowledgement page, and you list out some of these authors. And when you reach out to them, you might even mention that, hey, I mentioned you in the acknowledgments of my novel, right? Because you were such an influence on me, which is a subtle way that you can kind of seed the novel. Now, with all of this, I want to be very clear. It's about doing it in a genuine way. I don't do this stuff because I'm like, I'm going to coerce them into promoting me. This was something I uncovered by just naturally sharing other people. So I would write in my books, I love this other person's book, I recommend you check it out. I'd have a recommending reading page and things like that. And later on, I found out that that helped break the ice with some of these influencers. And they, in turn, some of them ended up promoting my book and my things back to their audience. But that actually wasn't the original intention. The original intention was, I love this author. I want to share their books. I'll share their books with my audience. And another thing that they value is I'm going to write reviews. So I have a person I wrote a review. This is a nonfiction example, but the principle is the same. This is an author, Stephen Geis, wrote the book Mini Habits, and I wrote a review on my blog about it. And I put his book in my recommended reading section and things like that. So it was a lot easier to jumpstart that relationship with them by saying, hey, I love your work. I wrote a review about it, so on and so forth. And then months down the road, when I had a book that was also on habits and I mentioned him in the book and things like that, it was a lot easier for him to be like, yeah, sure, I'll check out your book. And he ended up sharing it with his audience as well. So this is something that, you can review other authors' books. You can do written reviews. You can send them a testimonial. You can send them a video testimonial that they can put on their webpage. Those types of things. Great way to break the ice and come in with that, what can I give mentality right off the bat.
Fantastic. And I think obviously it always comes down to time and being patient, because obviously you do it once, nobody's going to notice. And then if somebody sees, and I don't mean stalking, obviously, or spamming people, but obviously you will see that people, this specific person keeps on commenting on your videos or keeps leaving you reviews. And so it does take time to nurture this relationship. But I wanted to ask you, any mistakes you've seen authors make when trying to do influencer marketing?
Yeah, definitely some mistakes. And tying back to what you just said about it's taking some time to nurture these relationships, the mistake is going and thinking this has got to be an instant thing. Now, I'm not going to say you can't, at first point of contact, say, have this idea for a way that we might be able to help each other out or cross promote. You absolutely can do that. The idea, though, is it's like planting seeds, and you plant the seeds and then you got to water them and give it time for, to cultivate. So it's a similar sort of thing with your relationships when you're cultivating relationships with influencers. Love what you said in that you might go into, if they have groups, Facebook groups, and you're commenting in there. If they're on social media and you're making comments on their posts. And this doesn't have to be, like you said, this is not stalking. This is not like every second, you're jumping right in with that. You probably have things that you're doing in your life. You're working on your writing and doing other things. To me, it's the natural thing where someone says something, oh, I really like that. And I'll drop a comment here and there. So I've seen that firsthand. And the mistake, tying back to what I said before, would be going in with a pure do this for me type of thing. And it's not at all considering how is this going to benefit their audience. So a lot of it's actually your internal orientation. I find that if you really appreciate someone and you come in with that mentality, then that helps a lot, which ties to another mistake where it's not personalized. When you're sending these messages or things like that, if you're blasting the same message to 1,000 other people, some copy and paste message, sheer law of numbers, yes, maybe some people will respond to that. Whenever I get people who want to either be interviewed by me or interview me or potentially check out their book or share something or whatever it is, if it just looks like a copy and paste message and there's no personalization, I tend to almost always immediately delete it. And a great example of what not to do pitch that I showcase sometimes, keeping the information private. It says, like, I'm a really big fan of your bracket insert domain name URL, right? And so they sent a message and they didn't even take out the little templated bracket. They forgot to put in my URL in there. So I'm like, even if they didn't do that, even if they had put in my URL, it's so clearly just a copy and paste job. So a real simple technique, and it might even take you only 30 seconds, right, to do this. I like to, if I'm first connecting with someone, a lot of times I'll send a personal video. So like, Brian, if we had never talked, I might be like, hey, what's up, Brian? I just checked out your fiction marketing summit. Dude, I was blown away. I love what you said in that interview with that Derek Doepker guy about, whatever, right? And so I might send a personal video and I will call them out by name. I will mention something that I specifically appreciate about them. And then I might bring up, hey, I had an idea of some ways that we might be able to collaborate because I'd love to help spread the word about what you're doing. Right. So that's tying into another thing. It's very much, I have something your audience might be interested in, or I want to spread the word about what you're doing. I want to get, and it's genuine, right? I really want to serve that person in whatever way I can. So to recap, lack of personalization, these generic messages, almost always deleted. Coming in purely with a, hey, will you do this for me? Versus I have something that could be your audience might enjoy, or whatever you can do for them. I have this testimonial I wrote for you, whatever it is. So really focusing on what you can offer them. And then it's a bonus thing. I'm not going to say you always have to do videos. I don't always do videos, but I like if you can put in a little personal touch. And an example of this, I think I've done this. I'm just going to grab a prop here, where if I have that author's book, I might even put holding up their book and do a little screenshot in an email like that. And imagine, like, Brian, if you got a book and someone's holding your book in their hand, they're pointing to it, or if you're watching and listening to this, someone's got your book and they're doing it. We're naturally, quote unquote, selfish as humans. We're interested in our stuff. So this person's holding up the author's book, right? That's a real simple way where I might go, I'm going to invest $10 to get a print copy of this person's book, because I'm going to send him an email, I'm going to hold it up, and I'm going to send him a video, and I'm going to do a testimonial raving about their book and all of this to get that relationship going, right? So a lot of these things then you find it's about getting that relationship going, and they're probably not going to promote your book just because you asked them to. Think about, would you promote a book that you've never read?
No.
Probably not. So your first goal is really to get them to connect with you. Then they might be interested in reading your book. So you might say, hey, I'd be an honor if if I could send you a copy of my book, if it's something, if you're not opposed to checking it out or whatever it is. That might be a next step to see if they're interested in that, or if you do other things besides books, whatever it might be. And then in the follow-up, like you said, Brian, it's not necessarily an overnight thing. In the follow-up, if they enjoyed your book, then you might, have a conversation about, hey, I could do something for your audience. Hey, I'm going to have it on sale. If your audience might be interested in that, or I could offer a free copy to your audience, a free ebook, right? Maybe for an email list sign up or whatever it is. That's when you pursue it after you built that relationship and they've actually gotten to know you and your work a little bit.
And what do you think about these? I mean, book bloggers are a bit old-fashioned now, I think. Booktubers, book talkers, these people who seem like, a big spike in a moment and then nothing after that. Is it worth our time? Obviously, I know it depends on the size of the audience and things like that, but is this thinking a bit in, trends rather than long-term, or is it something that is actually beneficial?
Yeah, well, first of all, influencer marketing will always be around in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I like learning these skills, because however it changes, wherever the big platform is, if it's TikTok today and a different platform in a couple of years, the concepts of connecting with other human beings is going to remain. It's been in business for, we're talking things that are thousands of years old in terms of human psychology. So if you get that, then you go, okay, the specific skill sets and the overarching principle will continue to work. What is working right now? What is worth your time? That's going to depend on your genre. That's going to depend on where your audience is at, so on and so forth. So I know TikTok, you mentioned book talkers. There are quite a number of people who are buying books right now off of TikTok, and that could be because they're following the author. It could also be because they're following people who review books or recommend books. And so another type of influencer would be the influencer who is not necessarily an author themselves. However, they do review thriller novels, let's say. So if you find some of these people, whether it's a blog, whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube, wherever else, you can check and see, okay, are they up to date? Have they posted recently? If it's been 5 years, maybe not that much. Do they have engagement? If social media, it's easier to see their followers. And if you can see that, okay, this is someone who is currently active, they're reviewing or recommending books that are similar to my book, and using whatever means you can kind of get a sense that they have a bit of an audience, then absolutely it can be worth reaching out to them. And that could be same sort of process. You might not say, hey, here's what I love about your novel. Here's what I love about your channel. Oh, I was laughing so much at that video that you did about fill in the blank, right? And by the way, I'll keep giving this caveat. This is not about fake compliments. If you really don't like someone, I don't recommend reaching out to them, right? So, or at least if you reach out to them, don't lie and say, oh, I think you're the greatest, when you're really like, I can't stand this person. You'll say something sincere about them. And then, yeah, so there's definitely some places that will promote it. Now, there's also pay to play. That's not as much what I'm talking about with influencer marketing, although that's certainly valid. I just call that advertising, though, a paid sponsorship or something like that. So you could certainly do that as well. There are people who will podcasts, for instance, or certain channels. Hey, this is brought to you by, such and such author's book, blah, 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 or such and such author. So you could do that. The idea here is connecting with people who have your audience once again. And I will say, at least as of now, I have heard of some fiction authors and novelists who've seen some results when they've gotten shout outs on places like TikTok, probably Instagram as well, and so on.
Yeah, definitely. TikTok is quite fun, actually, to see how it works. It actually seems to work, because some things like Twitter, for example, have never worked in selling books, at least in my in my experience. But TikTok seems to be fairly good. I wanted to ask you another question on this specifically. So, let's say we've engaged with someone for a few months, then we commented, we've reviewed their books, and maybe send them a couple of emails. The day comes when we need to ask. So we need to ask maybe for a shout out to our new book launch or things like that. Anything you recommend? Should we say yes to anything they say, like I'm only gonna write a tweet about it, or can we push a little bit and see what happens? How do you recommend approaching this when it's time to actually ask for something in return?
Yeah, so when it's time to ask, the first thing, I'm going to come back to this internal state of no expectation. Anytime I'm doing this with someone, I have no expectation or sort of guarantee that they're going to do something in return for me. That's not even the thought process of they're going to do something in return. When you're in a place of gratitude, it's like, I'm going to recommend this person regardless. I'm going to send them this email telling them what I love about their channel, and whether they do anything for me or not, doesn't matter. I still like them, appreciate the work that they're doing. And so much of it's built on that foundation going in. And then it becomes very sincerely like, hey, you can pick your own kind of style. I'm like, hey, totally cool if this doesn't work for you. I might start out with, hey, do you do shout outs? Do you ever recommend other authors' books? Things like that. If I haven't already seen them do that, right? Or just say, hey, I got something coming up that your audience might be interested in. So again, focus on your audience. I'm going to be launching this new book or whatever. Are you open to, possibly giving it a shout out or something like that? And again, so much of this is built on the foundation that you already have a relationship with them, or they've maybe already seen your books, or they've seen something else that you've done before, where at that point, it's much more of a casual sort of thing. You'd also frame it as a very Chris Voss sort of style, where you do a no-oriented question like, hey, would I be completely out of line in asking if you could mention this, right? And they're like, oh, it's not completely out of line. Or would this be a ridiculous idea to if you, could mention this thing that I think your audience might be interested in, blah, blah, blah. And I like to add in, I totally understand if that doesn't work for you, or totally cool if this doesn't fit, or, if this is just not at all what your audience is interested in, I completely get it. Right. So, actually taking the pressure off them. You're not trying to strong arm them into this. It's Like I actually do have more time if we need to go longer. I can go up another little bit here.
No problem.
And so the idea is, ideally they already know a little bit about you at this point, and so you can make the request. And I'm going to say this for like the fifth time. The way you position it is tying in your book into something that their audience might enjoy. So this is maybe you're doing a free promotion, right? Free promotions are easy. Hey, I have this book. I'd be willing to get, it's going to be free for a period of time if your audience might be interested in that, or it's going to be 99 cents, or I'm selling it for this much, but I'm doing this kind of private thing with a few other authors where if we're doing like this email sign up thing or whatever, if they want to get a free copy of it, whatever. So the idea is, as an influencer, your priority a lot of times is delivering value for your audience. Okay. And that's true whether it's an author, whether it's one of these channels or whatever else it is. So it's getting on their agenda. And this is where I can give kind of high level, concepts of it. Yet when it comes to the actual practice, you might vary this a little bit depending on who you're reaching out to and what is important to them. So if I know a romance author, and one of the things that why she writes romance, she's like, you got tired of these romance novels that they have these really weak, helpless heroines. I wanted to write something with these strong, empowered, heroines in these novels, right? And if you know that another author is into that, you might say, hey, if your audience is, kind of sick and tired of these weak, helpless heroines and want, a story with a strong heroine, that's what I, just wrote, right? Is that the kind of thing your audience is into? So you're connecting on that deeper level. And that's where it really comes into actually getting to know the author or the influencer and really connecting on some sort of level of values or a shared mission or something like that, where it goes beyond just, hey, I got this book, will you give it a shout out? Which is better than maybe nothing. The thing that I can't give to someone is that initiative to actually take the time and really get to know someone, even if that's 30 minutes to listen to some interviews, read some emails, kind of understand what this person's model of the world is, and then meet them at that place.
Definitely. So I see you mentioned Chris Voss there. Any other resource of any kind that you can mention people want to, get started, learn a bit more on influencer marketing, or even something tangential that is still in the same?
Yeah. So Chris Voss, for the background of that, is a FBI hostage negotiator. That was his background. So a lot of what he teaches is really about negotiation and getting agreements and things like that. So I love the book Never Split the Difference and understanding that. Tom Morkis in the author world, I've done a number of interviews with him. He's great when it comes to understanding influencer marketing, building out these relationships. And the biggest thing, it's actually more skills. You might call it emotional intelligence, things like that. And where I find that people kind of mess up the influencer marketing is usually not on a tactical level. And what I mean by that is it can just kind of vibe with people. You can tell the way that they're approaching things. And an example, like I'm teaching this almost as a technique, but it's not meant to be a technique. It's meant to be a genuine attitude, which is, if I say no to someone, here's an example of a mistake. There's a guy who reached out and it was some sort of maybe kind of business proposal type of thing. And I took a look at it and I was like, well, this is kind of cool, but I just, it wasn't a fit for me or whatever. So I politely said something like, thanks, it's not a fit for me or whatever. And then he comes back with some sort of like, oh, I thought you'd be smart enough to see the value in this or whatever. And I was like, thank you for confirming I made the right choice not to work with you. And that's not what I said, but mentally I'm thinking that. And it's like, because people can put on this mask, they can act so friendly. Oh, I love what you're doing. And then you tell them no. And then all of a sudden it's like they have this, they freak out about it or whatever. So that's where I'm like, actually come from a place of genuine service. And if he would have said, oh, totally fine, like I understand, hey, do you know someone else who might be interested in this? He could have turned that into a referral opportunity. And this, by the way, ties into one of your early questions, how to find influencers and people, once you have a relationship, you might ask who else they know, right? So this is the thing. Like, I can teach you to respond better to people who say no to you and not to take it personally. I can tell you that. To me, though, that's more of an internal practice. And that's recognizing also the abundance that's out there, that there's so many people who can help you, that if someone says no, whether most people are going to be nice about it, if someone's just rude about it or whatever, it's like there's other opportunities that are going to be out there. And so coming from a place of gratitude, of appreciation for these people, of how can I help Zig Ziglar, help enough people get what they want and you'll get what you want. And the recognition that I don't have any expectation that any one particular person or influencer is going to do something for me. Yet I do have an expectation that if I'm planting enough seeds and I'm out there being of service to enough people, that eventually things, law of numbers is going to come into my favor and something is going to work out. Right. So I don't know about other resources, practicing meditation, therapy, in all seriousness, whatever you need to do to work through maybe some of these deeper emotional hangups about stuff, that will actually have more of a payoff, because the people I work with, it's not the people that had the perfect script. It's not the people who had some magic line. It's not that they use some little phrasing of the question at the end. As much as I love Chris Wallace, it's not that they did a no-oriented versus a yes-oriented or this, that. It's, okay, this person seems genuine. They seem to really want to be helpful. I've gotten to know them a little bit. And ultimately what they have is going to be valuable for my audience. I'm going to want to share what they have with my audience. Okay, great, let's do it. And if it's not that case, then it might be, well, it's not quite a fit. Yet if they're cool about that, then I might go, well, let me see if I can think of someone else that I can recommend that they reach out to.
Definitely. So you've heard it, guys. Just after this interview, go and send a message to someone, or comment on one of their videos, or leave a review. And Derek, thank you so much. Been absolutely great. And I hope to see you again in the next edition. But for now, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks. And guys, don't forget to check all the resources around somewhere around this video and links. And I'll see you in the next session.